The interview was in 6 hours. The shirt had been clean, pressed, hanging in my closet 3 days ago before Mum asked me to throw it in with the family load. I'd folded everyone's clothes for years. I'd separated the whites. I'd pre-treated the stains on Dad's work uniforms and Rachel's dance costumes. I'd done it without complaint because that's what good daughters do. But tonight, when I needed that shirt, the one piece of clothing that made me feel capable and professional, it was buried under everyone else's forgotten laundry, marinating in cold, stale water because someone had started the load and walked away. I reached in. The fabric was slimy. It smelled like mildew and detergent that had turned sour. My hand shook as I pulled it out, water streaming onto the concrete floor. The interview was for the junior analyst position at Morrison & Klein. I'd studied for weeks. I'd researched every partner, memorised market trends, practiced my answers and keys until my roommate begged me to stop. This shirt was supposed to be my armour. Em? Rachel's voice drifted down the stairs, light and unbothered. Are you still up? I didn't answer. I stood there holding the ruined shirt, watching water drip from the sleeves. She appeared in the doorway, her hair in a silk wrap, wearing the pyjama set I'd given her for Christmas, the one I'd saved 2 months of grocery money to buy. Oh, were you looking for something? My shirt. My voice came out flat. For my interview. Oh, that. She wrinkled her nose. Yeah, I started that load yesterday, but I got distracted. Brandon called and we ended up talking for like 3 hours. She said his name, the way people say miracle or destiny. You can just rewash it, right? The interview is at 8. So, wake up early. She shrugged, so casual, so unconcerned. It's not that big of a deal, Em. You're being dramatic. I looked at her, really looked at her. At 23, Rachel had never held a job longer than 4 months. She'd quit her last position at the boutique because the manager didn't respect her creative vision. Before that, it was the cafe, the yoga studio, the gallery. Each time, Mum and Dad had nodded sympathetically, told her she deserved better, asked what she needed to feel supported. When I'd lost my campus job because I'd missed too many shifts covering Rachel's emergency babysitting gigs for the neighbours, Dad had sat me down and explained the importance of reliability. I needed that shirt, I said quietly, and I said you can rewash it. Her tone shifted, impatient now. God, you always make everything into this huge thing. It's laundry, Emily, laundry. She turned and went back upstairs. I heard her laugh at something on her phone as she walked away. I stood in the basement, holding my ruined shirt, and felt something crack inside my chest. Not break, cracks don't break things. They just reveal the faults that were always there. I'd been cracking for years. Small fractures that I'd plastered over with understanding, with patience, with the desperate hope that if I was good enough, helpful enough, selfless enough, someone would notice. No one ever did. I rewashed the shirt. I sat on the dryer at 3 a.m, watching it tumble through the cycle. I dried it. I ironed it at 5 a.m. in the kitchen, my eyes burning, my hand steady out of pure spite. The interview went poorly. I was exhausted. I stuttered through my market analysis. I blanked on the name of the senior partner. I saw the interviewer's face shift from interested to polite to subtly checking his watch. We'll be in touch, he said, and I knew they wouldn't be. I drove home in silence. When I walked through the door, Mum was at the kitchen table with Rachel, looking at fabric swatches. How'd it go? Mum asked, not looking up. Fine. That's good, honey. She turned to Rachel. Now I'm thinking the sage green for the bridesmaids. It'll photograph beautifully. Rachel was getting married in 6 months. The wedding had consumed our house like a flood. Every surface was covered in samples, magazines, spreadsheets. Every conversation circled back to centerpieces and seating charts, and whether the string quartet was worth the extra expense. Em, you'll help with the favours, right? Rachel said, finally glancing at me. I'm thinking little potted succulents, We'd need to assemble like 200 of them. Sure, I said, because that's what I did. I said sure. I said okay. I said whatever you need. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the shirt, about all the shirts, about the time I'd given Rachel my last $20 for her emergency manicure appointment, about the time I'd skipped my college graduation party to help set up for her birthday dinner, about the time Dad had borrowed my car for a week and returned it with an empty tank and a cracked windshield, then gotten annoyed when I asked about it, about the thousands of tiny moments that had carved me down to nothing. I got up. I went downstairs. The basement was dark and cold. I stood in front of the washing machine, the one I'd spent so many hours in front of, washing everyone's clothes, folding everyone's towels, sorting everyone's socks. I opened the cabinets. I found the bleach. I don't remember thinking about it. I just remember pouring. I remember the chemical smell. I remember watching it glug into the machine. I remember adding Rachel's favourite sweater, her cashmere cardigan, her silk blouse. I remember pressing start. I went back upstairs. I got into bed. I fell asleep. The screaming woke me at dawn. Rachel's voice, high and shredded with panic. Mum! Mum! Oh my God, look what happened! I lay still. Everything's ruined. My sweater, my cardigan, the blouse Brandon bought me, they're covered in bleach stains. Who would do this? I listened to Mum's soothing voice, Dad's angry confusion, the chaos spiralling through the house. I got up. I got dressed. I went downstairs. They were all in the laundry room. Rachel was crying, holding up her destroyed clothes. Mum was examining the machine. Dad was pacing. Emily, Mum looked at me, her face drawn. Did you do laundry last night? Yes. Did you use bleach? Yes. Rachel's face went red. You did this. You ruined my clothes. I was washing my own things, I said calmly. I didn't know yours were in there. Someone must have left them in the machine overnight. The silence was stunning. Rachel's mouth opened and closed. Mum's expression shifted. Dad stopped pacing. That was you, Mum said slowly. You left the load in yesterday. Rachel's tears stopped. She looked at me with something like hatred. You knew they were in there. How would I know? I kept my voice even. I put my clothes in the machine. I added detergent. I pressed start. If someone's clothes were already in there, that's not my responsibility. You're lying, Rachel hissed. Am I? Dad cleared his throat. Rachel, you did say you forgot about the laundry yesterday. That doesn't mean she gets to ruin my things. I didn't ruin anything, I said. I did my laundry, that's all. I walked away. I heard them arguing behind me. I heard Rachel crying. I heard Mum trying to calm everyone down. I felt nothing. That afternoon, I got the rejection email from Morrison & Klein. I read it twice. Then I deleted it. I sat at my desk and looked at my reflection in the dark computer screen. I looked tired. I looked hollow. I looked done. The days that followed blurred together. Rachel wouldn't speak to me. She'd walk past me in the hallway without looking, her silence thick and accusatory. Mum kept trying to mediate, pulling me aside to ask what had really happened, suggesting I apologise to keep the peace. It was an accident, Mum said, her voice pleading. You could just say you're sorry. I'm not sorry. Emily, she's your sister. Then maybe she should act like I'm hers. Mum's face pinched. What is that supposed to mean? I thought about explaining, about listing every forgotten promise, every cancelled plan, every time I'd bent myself into shapes to accommodate Rachel's life while mine got smaller and smaller. But what was the point? They'd never seen it before. They wouldn't see it now. Nothing, I said. Forget it. The wedding planning continued around me like I was invisible. Rachel ordered the bridesmaids to a fitting without telling me. Mum booked the florist consultation on a day she knew I had work. Dad asked me to contribute to the rehearsal dinner fund, then spent 10 minutes explaining how tight money was, right before telling Rachel he'd cover her honeymoon flight upgrades. I wrote the check. I went to work. I came home. I stopped existing in any way that mattered. 2 weeks after the interview rejection, I was doing the laundry again. My clothes this time. Only mine. I'd learned my lesson about mixing loads. Rachel came down while I was folding. She stood in the doorway watching me. "You really don't care, do you?" she said finally. I looked up. About what? About us, about this family, about anything except yourself. I folded a shirt, smoothed the sleeves, set it in the basket. "Is that what you think?" "That's what I know." She crossed her arms. "You've been different ever since the clothes thing. Cold, distant. Maybe I'm tired." "Of what?" "Of being the only one who bends." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "You think you're the only one who makes sacrifices?" "I'm planning a wedding, Emily. Do you know how stressful that is?" "No," I said. "I wouldn't. I've never had the luxury of planning something for myself." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I've spent my whole life planning things for you, running errands for you, fixing your problems, and the one time I needed something, one shirt, one interview, one chance, you couldn't even be bothered to finish your laundry. It was an accident." "It was a pattern." I picked up my basket. "But it's fine. I'm done now." "Done with what?" "With this." I gestured between us. "With pretending that caring about myself makes me selfish." I walked past her. She didn't try to stop me. That night, I drove to the grocery store and bought sleeping pills. The strong kind, the kind that required talking to the pharmacist. She was older, kind-faced, and she smiled as she handed them over. "Having trouble sleeping?" she asked charmingly. "Something like that." "Well, these should help. Just follow the dosage instructions carefully." "I will," I lied. I drove home. The house was dark except for the kitchen light. I could hear the TV upstairs, Rachel's laugh, mixing with Brandon's voice. Mum and Dad's bedroom door was closed. I went to my room. I locked the door. I sat on my bed and looked at the pill bottle. I thought about the interview I'd failed, about the job I wouldn't get, about the life I wouldn't live. I thought about Rachel's wedding, about standing in sage green while everyone celebrated her happiness. I thought about the years, stretching ahead, an endless cycle of being needed but never seen. I thought about the shirt, forgotten in the machine, and realised I'd been forgotten too. I opened the bottle. I took them at midnight. All of them. I lay down in my bed, in the room I'd lived in since I was 7, and I waited. It didn't hurt. It was quiet, like falling asleep, like stopping. The last thing I remembered was the sound of the washing machine humming in the basement, running another load that wasn't mine. When I opened my eyes, I was 17. I knew immediately. The posters on my walls, bands I'd loved before Rachel had called them childish, the desk with my high school textbooks, the stuffed bear on my dresser that I'd gotten rid of because Rachel needed the space for her makeup collection. But more than that, I knew because I remembered everything. Every moment, every hurt, every time I'd folded myself smaller to make room for someone else. Every moment up to the pills. I sat up slowly. My body felt different, younger, stronger. My hands weren't shaking. My chest didn't feel hollow. I walked to the mirror. My face looked back at me 6 years younger. But my eyes were different. They were calm. They were sure. I had died, and I had come back. The universe had given me a second chance, and I wasn't going to waste it being small. I spent the morning in my room, processing. I remembered the next 6 years in detail. I knew Rachel would get engaged in 2 years. I knew Dad would have a health scare that would bring us all together for exactly 3 weeks before everything went back to normal. I knew Mum would start her book club and forget about it after 2 meetings. I knew I would apply to Morrison & Klein twice, once now, once after graduation, and fail both times in my old life. I knew exactly where all my choices had led me. To a basement, to bleach, to pills, not this time. The first test came that morning at breakfast. "Emily," Mum said, not looking up from her coffee. "After school, can you take Rachel to her dance fitting? I have a hair appointment." In my first life, I'd said yes. I'd cancelled my study group. I'd driven Rachel across town, waited for an hour, driven her back, and still managed to fail my chemistry test the next day because I'd run out of time to prepare. "No," I said. Mom's head snapped up. "What?" "I have a study group. It's important." "It's just one afternoon, Em," Rachel said, her voice already taking on that wheedling tone I'd grown up hearing. "My fitting is important too." "Then Mom can reschedule her hair appointment." I took a bite of toast. "Or you can take the bus." The silence at the table was deafening. Dad lowered his newspaper. "Emily, your mother asked you for help. And I'm saying no." I looked at him steadily. I have my own responsibilities. I'd never said no before. Not once. I watched them process it, saw the confusion, the irritation, the disbelief. "You're being selfish," Rachel said. "Maybe." I finished my toast and stood up. "But I'm okay with that." I left the table. I heard them whispering behind me, the urgent, scandalized tones of people confronting something unexpected. I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I didn't care. School was strange. Everything was familiar but distant, like watching a movie I'd seen before. I knew which teachers would call on me. I knew which hallways to avoid. I knew that Jordan Blake would ask me to prom in 3 weeks. And I knew I'd say yes because I was afraid of being rude. And I knew the whole night would be awkward and forgettable. This time, when he approached me at my locker, I smiled and said, "I'm not interested, but thanks for asking." His face went red. "You were going to." I closed my locker. "The answer is no." I walked away. I heard his friends laughing. I didn't turn around. At lunch, my best friend Claire grabbed my arm. "What is going on with you today? You seem different." "Do I? You told Jordan no before he even asked you. You skipped homeroom. You told Mrs. Peterson her lecture was boring." "It was boring." Claire stared at me. "Are you okay?" I thought about that. Was I okay? I died. I'd been so tired of being invisible that I'd erased myself completely. I'd been given an impossible second chance. I remembered everything, the interview, the shirt, the bleach, the pills. I remembered the feeling of dissolution, of finally letting go. "I'm better than okay," I said. The weeks passed differently this time. I stopped volunteering for everything. I stopped saying yes automatically. I stopped making myself smaller. When Rachel asked me to help address her birthday party invitations, I said I had homework. When Dad asked me to skip my art class to help him with yard work, I said no. When Mum suggested I give up my Saturday to help Rachel shop for homecoming dresses, I told her I had plans. The plans were simple. I sat in my room and read a book. But they were my plans, and that made them precious. The house grew tense. My family didn't know how to process this version of me. They'd push and I'd hold firm. They'd guilt and I'd shrug. They'd hint and suggest and imply, and I'd simply say no. "You've changed," Mom said one night, her voice tight with something like accusation. "Yes," I agreed. "You used to be so helpful." "I still am, just not at the expense of myself." She didn't know what to say to that. The real shift came when I started doing my own laundry. Only my own laundry. I'd always done the family's washing, everyone's clothes mixed together in the machine, sorted and folded and delivered to their rooms. It was expected. It was my job, somehow, though no one had ever officially assigned it to me. One Saturday morning, Mum came into my room holding an empty basket. "Em, can you do a load today? Your father needs his work shirts." "I'm doing my laundry later, he can do his own." Mum's face went blank with surprise. "What?" "I'm only washing my clothes from now on." "But you always do the family laundry." "Not anymore." "Emily, that's ridiculous, we all share the machine." "Exactly, so we can all use it for our own clothes." She stood there, the empty basket hanging from her hands, looking at me like I'd suggested burning the house down. "Who's going to do your father's work shirts? Rachel's délégués?" "They will," I said simply. "They're adults." Mum left without another word. I heard her and Dad arguing later, his voice raised in frustration. I heard Rachel complaining that I was being difficult on purpose. I heard the washing machine running multiple times that day, each of them figuring out how to work it like it was some complicated piece of technology instead of a simple appliance they'd walked past for years. I did my own laundry that evening. One small load, my jeans, my shirts, my towel. I stood there and watched the cycle, feeling something close to joy. This was mine. Just mine. The months unfolded. I applied to colleges across the country. I wrote essays about finding my voice, about learning to take up space. I was honest in ways I'd never been before. In my first life, I'd stayed local because Rachel had begged me not to leave, because Mum had cried about her baby going away, because Dad had talked about family loyalty. This time, I'd applied to schools 12 hours away, 15 hours, 20. When the acceptance letters came, I chose the farthest one. "California?" Mum said, her voice thin. "That's so far." "I know. But what about us? What about me?" She didn't have an answer. Rachel's engagement happened right on schedule. Brandon proposed at the restaurant, down on one knee, the whole performance. Rachel called me crying happy tears and I congratulated her sincerely. "You'll be my maid of honor, right?" she asked. "No," I said. Silence. "What?" "I'll be a bridesmaid if you want, but not the maid of honor." "Why not? You're my sister." "And I'll celebrate your wedding as your sister, but I won't organize your bridal shower, manage your vendors, or coordinate your bridesmaids. That's not a role I want." "Emily, that's what the maid of honor does." "I know. That's why I'm saying no." She hung up on me. She didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. When she finally called back, her voice was cold. "Fine. Vanessa will be my maid of honor." "That's great. She'll be wonderful." Rachel waited for me to fight, to apologize, to take it back. When I didn't, she made a frustrated sound and hung up again. The engagement party was scheduled for the same weekend as my college orientation. "You'll have to miss orientation," Mum said, as if it was obvious. "We'll call the school, they'll understand." "No," Mum's face hardened. "Emily, this is your sister's engagement party. And this is my college orientation. I'm going." "You can't miss Rachel's party." "Watch me," Rachel cried. She said I was selfish, cruel, jealous of her happiness. She said I'd always resented her, that I was trying to ruin her special day. She said I was a terrible sister. I listened. I let her get it all out. Then I said, "I'm going to orientation. You can be angry about it or not. That's your choice." I left for college in August. I packed my car alone. My family barely spoke to me. Rachel wouldn't even come out of her room to say goodbye. Dad handed me an envelope with some money. "Call your mother," he said gruffly. "She's upset. She'll get over it." He looked at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. I didn't recognize the girl who'd lived in this house for 18 years either. She'd been so desperate to be loved that she'd disappeared completely. I wasn't desperate anymore. College was different this time. Better. I knew which classes to take, which professors to seek out. I knew which friends were real and which were conveniences. I joined clubs that mattered to me. I studied what I wanted to study. I dated people who respected my boundaries. I washed my own laundry in the dorm machines. Just mine. I never touched anyone else's clothes, never offered to throw in their things with my load, never made myself responsible for other people's forgotten wet clothes. Every time I stood in that laundry room, watching my clothes spin, I thought about the shirt, about the basement, about the pills. I was grateful. Grateful for the second chance. Grateful for the clarity death had given me. In my junior year, I applied to Morrison & Klein again. The interview was easy this time. I knew what they'd ask. I knew how to answer. I wore a different shirt, one I'd bought myself, washed myself, pressed myself the night before with care and attention. When the senior partner asked about my market analysis, I didn't hesitate. I'd been preparing for this moment for years, in 2 different lifetimes. "We'll be in touch," he said, smiling warmly this time. They called the next day with an offer. I worked the internship with everything I had. I learned fast. I kept my head down and my boundaries clear. I didn't stay late to help colleagues who'd procrastinated. I didn't take on extra projects to be a team player. I did my job, I did it well, and I went home. After a year, they offered me a full-time position after graduation. After 2 years, they promoted me. I barely spoke to my family during this time. Mum called occasionally, her voice wounded and confused, asking when I'd visit, why I never came home for holidays. Rachel sent bitter texts about my absence, about how I'd missed her bridal shower, her bachelorette party, her dress fitting, her cake tasting. I didn't respond. I had nothing to say that they'd want to hear. The wedding was in the summer after I graduated. I almost didn't go. I bought the plane ticket 3 times and cancelled it twice. But something in me, some old instinct, some lingering thread of curiosity, made me get on the plane that 3rd time. I arrived the day before. I got a hotel room. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. The wedding was beautiful. Rachel looked stunning in her dress, her hair perfect, her makeup flawless. Brandon looked proud and nervous. The venue was covered in sage green and gold, exactly as I remembered from my first life. The string quartet played perfectly. I sat in the back. I wore a simple navy dress. I watched my sister get married. I watched Mum cry happy tears. I watched Dad walk Rachel down the aisle with his chest puffed out. No one noticed me until the reception. I was at the bar when Rachel saw me. Her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, confusion, something that might have been joy, then anger. "You came." "I did." "You didn't RSVP." "No." She stared at me. I'd changed in the years since I'd left home. I was thinner, sharper. I wore my hair differently. I'd learned how to dress for my body, how to stand like I deserved to take up space. I'd learned how to exist without apologizing for it. "You look different," she said. "So do you. Congratulations." "You missed everything." Her voice was tight. "The showers, the parties, the planning, you just disappeared. I went to college. I built a life. You abandoned your family." I looked at her, really looked at her. She was 25 now, still beautiful, still the centre of attention, still expecting the world to bend around her. "No," I said quietly. "I stopped letting my family abandon me." Her face went red. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" I set down my drink. "Remember the laundry, Rachel? The shirt I needed for my interview? That was years ago. It was the last time I put anyone's needs before my own. Do you know what happened after that interview?" She didn't answer. "I didn't get the job. I came home exhausted and defeated, and you asked me to help with your wedding favours. Do you remember what I said?" "Emily," I said sure. I always said sure. I said sure when you needed rides, when you needed money, when you needed someone to blame. I said sure until I didn't exist anymore. "That's not..." She trailed off. "I didn't know." "You didn't ask." The The music played. People danced. The wedding went on around us, a celebration of love and new beginnings. I felt oddly detached from it, like I was watching from underwater. "I needed you," Rachel said, and her voice cracked. "You're my sister. I needed you, and you just left." "I couldn't stay," I said. "Staying would have killed me." The words hung between us, more true than she could possibly know. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something like understanding in her eyes. Not acceptance, not agreement, but recognition. "Are you happy?" she asked. I thought about my apartment, small and mine. My job, challenging and mine. My life, quiet and mine. I thought about the laundry room in my building, where I washed only my clothes, where no one else's emergencies became my problems. "Yes," I said. "I am. I'm glad." She said it like she meant it. Maybe she did. "I wish you'd been here. I wish I'd been someone you wanted around for more than what I could do for you." She flinched. "That's not..." "It is. But it's okay. I don't blame you anymore." "I don't need your forgiveness," she said, defensive. "I know. I'm giving it anyway." I left the reception early. I went back to my hotel. I ordered a room service and sat by the window, looking out at the city lights. My phone buzzed. A text from Mum. "I saw you at the wedding. Why didn't you come say hello?" I typed. I did what I came to do. She didn't respond. I flew home the next morning. Not home to my family, home to my apartment, my life, my carefully constructed existence where I mattered. A month later, Rachel called. "Hey," she said, awkward and uncertain. "Hey." "I'm back from the honeymoon." "How was it?" "Good. Great. She paused. "Look, I've been thinking about what you said at the wedding." I waited. "I don't think I ever realised how much you did for us. For me. I just thought... I don't know, I thought that was just what you did." "It was," I said. "Until it wasn't." "I'm sorry." The words came out rushed. "I'm sorry I never noticed. I'm sorry I left my laundry in the machine. I'm sorry about your interview. I'm sorry about all of it." I closed my eyes. In my first life, I would have died for this apology. I'd literally died without it. Now I didn't need it. But I accepted it anyway. "Thank you," I said. Can we start over? Can I try to be a better sister?" I thought about that. Could she? Could people really change? Could our relationship be rebuilt into something balanced and real? "Maybe," I said. "But it has to be different this time. I can't go back to being who I was." "I don't want you to." She paused. "I kind of miss you, though. The real you. I think I'm just starting to figure out who that is." We talked for an hour. It was stilted and strange, but it was honest. She told me about her honeymoon, about the resort, about a fight she and Brandon had about dishes. I told her about my promotion, about my apartment, about the coffee shop I'd discovered down the street. We didn't fix everything. We didn't even fix most things. But we started. Over the next year, we built something new. Rachel would call, and sometimes I'd answer and sometimes I wouldn't. She'd invite me to dinner, and sometimes I'd come, and sometimes I'd have other plans. She'd ask for favours, and sometimes I'd help, and sometimes I'd say no. And slowly, she stopped asking for favours and started asking about my life. Mum and Dad were harder. They never really understood why I'd pulled away. They saw it as a teenage rebellion that had gone on too long. They made comments about how I'd gotten cold and selfish. Dad mentioned every time we spoke how much they'd sacrificed for me. I let them think what they wanted. Their opinions didn't define me anymore. On the anniversary of my first death, the night I'd taken the pills, I went to the laundromat near my apartment. I brought a single load: my clothes, my towels, my sheets. I loaded the machine carefully. I added detergent. I set the timer. I sat in the plastic chair and watched the machine spin, watched the water foam and the drum turn, watched my things get clean. No one else's clothes were in there, no one else's emergency, no one else's forgotten load. Just mine. The machine beeped. I moved my clothes to the dryer. I waited. When they were done, I folded them on the counter, slowly, carefully, without rushing. I thought about the girl I'd been. The one who'd stood in her parents' basement at 2 a.m, holding a ruined shirt, feeling her life crumble around her. I thought about the woman I'd become. The one who'd learned that love without boundaries was just another word for disappearing. I thought about the space between those two versions of myself, and everything I'd learned in the crossing. I gathered my clean laundry. I walked home through the quiet streets. I climbed the stairs to my apartment. I put my clothes away in my closet, my towels in my bathroom, my sheets on my bed. Everything in its place, everything mine. I made tea, I sat by the window, I looked out at the city, at all the lit windows holding all the other lives being lived. I thought about the washing machine in my parents' basement, about Rachel's destroyed sweater, about the bleach and the rage and the moment I decided I'd rather disappear than keep being invisible. I thought about second chances and how rare they are. How most people don't get to come back, don't get to choose differently, don't get to learn that they mattered all along. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Lunch next week? I smiled. I typed, Thursday works. She sent back a heart emoji. Small progress. Real progress. I finished my tea. I washed the cup. I dried it. I put it away. Then I went to bed in my clean sheets, in my quiet apartment, in my carefully built life. And I slept. No pills, no panic, no desperation, just sleep. Just peace. Just the gentle certainty that I was enough. All by myself, without folding myself into nothing for anyone else. The laundry was done. The cycle was complete. And I was finally, beautifully free.